Hi everyone, and welcome to Why SDR Churn is So High and What You Can Do About It. My name is Becc Holland. I'm the head of sales development of Course.ai. Usually I'm pretty peppy in these sessions, but today I wanted to pack a really serious topic that I've seen as kind of an epidemic in the industry, and to do it, I've invited the wonderful Gabby Morelli to join alongside here, because Gabby, you have been a SDR.
Yes.
You've been a team lead of SDRs. Mm-hmm. You have been a senior SDR.
Yep.
And then you're looking to become an account executive pretty quickly here.
Yes.
So we are going to unpack a little bit later the 4-step process of what I put together and how I've kept my churn. I haven't actually had any churn on my teams. That sounds so self-alluding right off the bat, but I haven't had any churn, and how I was really prophylactic about that and the 4 steps of career progression. But first I wanted to start by asking you a few questions, if you don't mind.
Nope, not at all.
So this is going to be a really heavy session, and I wanted to dig in a little bit of your experience in your past. Mm-hmm. So from what I've seen in terms of sales dev reps, they just aren't becoming account executives these days, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I've seen a massive amount of churn rate. So the normal in the industry that I've seen is an SDR usually starts, works really hard for a company for like a year and a half. Yeah. They then transition to another company so they can become some kind of transactional AE. Then they transfer to another company maybe so they can become a full-blown SMB AE. And I have to think that this is because of the process of which we're handling them. My first question to you is, keep in mind this is unprompted, so this is more of a fireside chat session, but do you have SDR friends in the industry?
Yes.
Have you seen any of them become an account executive so far out of all of your friends?
No.
You haven't had one single friend?
One, but it didn't go very well.
Okay, so you can think of one person. Yeah. So if you had to guess, why don't you think they are becoming, why do you think it's so prevalent that they aren't making that transition? Why do you, if you had to guess?
Yeah, I think I can only speak personally. Sometimes that BDR to account executive gap looks like the Grand Canyon.
Yeah. You mean in terms of product knowledge?
In terms of training on how to become a successful account executive and like the basic structure and steps on how to get there. A lot of the time that looks different for BDRs on the same team. And it's just one of those things that I think really inhibits career progression, and I think makes why people leave companies.
So do you have experience with that? That's a deep question.
I do, yeah.
Okay, so did you come to Course with the hopes that you could become an account executive one day?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a big part of why I came here as well.
Yeah, so to back you up, most of the people that I interview, and I interview probably 4 to 5 people per day, most of the people that I interview in the industry, if they have experience within the sales dev world, they're like, yeah, I've been at my company for a year and a half, and I'm like, do you like the company? And if they're good at interviewing, they'll say, yes, I do. I really like the company, I like the product, I like the team, but I just didn't see a career progression for me there. I didn't see, I was getting all these promises, and you'd have all the classic, have you ever run into maybe a CEO or someone who's in leadership that has kind of the encouraging SDR session where they're like, you guys are the backbone of our business. Have you ever been through one of those before? Yes. Do you think that there is really any, do you think it's rare that a company does actually have an intentional plan of how you can become an account executive? From what you've been hearing from your friends? From
what I've been hearing from my friends, it is more rare, I'd say, that there is a very structured plan, and that the gap is not as scary for people.
Yeah. Okay. So we know it's, at least just in our experience and from what I've seen in the industry, from what you've been through, that it's rare to actually have a program in place. So I think that's the number one churn for the reason of SDR and why people are jumping companies. Let me transition here. I have 2 more questions for you, and then I can kind of go into our structure.
Right.
If you were a CEO, think of it from that perspective, would you see value in turning your SDRs into account executives?
Oh, yes.
And why?
The BDRs, SDRs are on the front lines of the sales process. They know your ICP intimately. They're refining their sales outreach on a day-to-day basis, they're the first impression that you're gonna get, your company gets from, or your prospects get from your company.
Yeah.
And all of that wealth of knowledge that they have, if you're able to transition that person and build them into an account executive at your company, I mean, it's gonna pay off.
Yeah, that's
No
how,
doubt.
that's exactly how I would view it too, of like, okay, you're losing all that tribal knowledge that they just learned in terms of product. Why don't you think it's a agenda item for CEOs or for higher leadership to make that career progression happen then, if you had to guess?
Why isn't it a priority?
Yeah, like why does it not happen?
Either it's just overlooked, or it is, it's one of those things that maybe is not top of priority, get to it later. And I think that there are BDRs, since it's an entry-level position, you always think like maybe can get a new BDR for that role as well, and you just overlook the amount of training and time you spent with that person. And
totally. So we kind of view it, I feel like a lot of leaders view it as a like churn and burn role of like, I'll just bring on a bunch of BDRs, I'll overscale because I want more pipeline. I'll then scale back and I'll cut out all the people that aren't performing. And this is just a high volume program. So, I mean, I've been interviewed for companies before where the average, our average retained true enterprise, nice company was 5 months. 5 months that they were retaining SDRs because they just didn't see a path there. Okay, so I have one last question, then we can go into this. Let's talk about, I know it's probably a little painful, but let's talk about your career before Chorus. If they had said, okay, Gabby, you're an account executive.
Yeah.
Right now. Congratulations, here's a promotion, here's the money, here's the title, whatever. Would you have felt prepared in that moment to be an account executive?
No, I would not have.
And why not?
Same reasons that I've gone over before. Either I've seen it pan out poorly in the past for my peers, or I myself only am familiar with the first 5 to 10% of the sales cycle and don't understand. It's a big question mark on what that looks like after the disco.
Do you think the roles are different, SDR and AE?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, if she says no to this, I don't know what to do anymore, folks. I mean, I've been an account executive, enterprise AE, and SDR, and they're completely different roles, or at least they were in my experience. Of one is, very high on the prospecting angle, and your goals are different. So that's what makes it a different part of the funnel. Without further ado, I wanted to transition into the 4 different steps within career progression to make sure that you have account executives. So the 2 problems that I'm hearing that we need to solve, that we need to be very intentional about in this process is, number 1, that we are lowering churn by actually having a plan. And number 2, that we are being very intentional on training our SDRs within the SDR role to be an account executive, so when they do make that transition, we're sure that they can crush it. So, I actually have a whole different session on the 5 ways to turn your SDRs into AEs before they're even thinking about becoming an account executive. But for today, let's just focus on the career progression and what's worked for me in the past and what we have going on here at Chorus. So step 1 is an SDR, and typically I can see SDRs, be in this role for like 8 or 9 months. They come in, either fresh out of school, or very early on in their career. And I stamp them with basically after post-ramp, ramp can be anywhere from 2 to 3 months for SDRs, that I have them hit 6 months of quota attainment, and then they're eligible for a promotion. But the other 2 things that I make sure that they do, I mean, I'm very training heavy within this first section. So, I mean, can you attest to that a little?
Yes, a little bit.
Can you give me a little description or snapshot of the training sessions we do here?
Well, we go over your, 7 deadly sins, your flip the script, but in terms of like how you organize those trainings?
Yeah, or how frequent are they?
Frequent, weekly.
Yeah.
Weekly, twice a week.
She's like, lady, stop training me so much.
No, it's great though.
Yeah, so I'm try to be very intentional about turning you into account executives before you make that transition in terms of product, but also in terms of how to have a conversation. That's why we have different selling methodologies, spin, medic, challengers, because you need to know how to structure a conversation, period, regardless of your product. So first step, I want to make sure they're hitting quota. I'm very, very intricate about how they're doing emails, cold calls, and just coaching day by day. Yeah. They get better day by day because I get better day by day. And so we always want to have that constant focus to make sure that we are making them have progression. The other two pieces is that I stamp them with a call listening quota of like the different, and we covered that in one of the other sessions of the 7 different kinds of calls to listen to, but I want to make sure that they're listening to AE calls. And the third piece is I put in a mock demo test. So this is, you have to go through our product, listen to our account executive calls, and just pass the test on how you were to give a demo if you were to give a demo today. Okay, so on to step number 2. So step number 2 is a senior SDR role. They have, hit all of these different requirements within the first BDR bucket to be eligible to move on to senior SDR. So senior SDR, what I have them as additional, well, let's start with perks. Perks is more fun. So the perks that I usually give them in that promotion is obviously more money. And then the really important perk that I give them is third-party training. So I usually invite Sandler is probably one of my top favorites. So those trainers cost money, and we want to make sure that we have really serious SDRs that have a lot of intent to stick around in that party. So I give that as one of the perks along with the title to make sure that they are being trained on how to govern a conversation with the prospect, whether that's in discovery stage or negotiation, pricing, or demo, or proof of concept stage, but really want them to have all the tools that they need, within the sales world to be successful in that account executive role. The responsibilities that I, bridle them with in the senior SDR role is, number 1, that they run some of the onboarding classes for me. So that's a really good, opportunity for Gabby and some of the other senior SDRs to, onboard. Culturally, it's really nice that they get to know their teammates, but also they usually have a lot of experience with the tech stack at this point. So outreach really well, the tech stack that we're using. And so it's a good chance to kind of put them in the mentorship role and get them involved with the team. The other piece that I usually involve, I forgot a dot here, is I have them run a biweekly product webinar. So typically on the inbound line, you have a lot of what we'd call unqualifieds coming through. And so I promise them a demo and so on and make sure to deliver on that. So I have a senior SDR. I have them route all of the inbound prospects who don't quite hit our qualification metric to go to a biweekly product webinar, and I have a senior SDR run it. So then all of the unqualified prospects still get a taste of our platform and still really like us brand-wise. But they don't have the full attention and time of account executive. But the other really nice side is it gives Gabby a great chance to practice. So she's passed the test here for the mock demo, if she were to give it, and then live here, she, gives the product webinar to her prospects. So the other piece that I really include here, I didn't write it on the board, but at the end of that webinar, I have Gabby say something like, anyone who's interested in pricing can reach out to me directly, and I have her close those small deals. So basically, you are going to have a few prospects that look unqualified, but actually do have the budget to buy. So that's a good way to surface out of the unqualified rubble, some of the prospects that do have the budget and the sincerity to buy on the spot. So she gets a lot of practice pitching the original demo and then also, closing a couple of deals. The third step that I have them, should we switch spots? No, I want to leave you in the frame if you don't mind. The third step that I have, so this is the dividing line, really. These two are SDR roles where she gets some experience closing, but then we have them transitioned over to step 3 as an ISR or a junior AE role. So I've heard it called a myriad of different things. Over here we call them ISRs, but basically they're a little bit on the other side of the divider, but they're not a full account executive yet. So, typically industry-wide, I've seen these kind of account executives closing really small deals like SMB deals. But the other important piece is I still want to get my bang for my buck in terms of prospecting from them. So I usually make it mandatory of like, okay, you are closing full-time, that is your full-time job, but 50% of your pipe has to be sourced, self-sourced. So it gives them kind of that SDR feel of like, okay, you're still sourcing some of your deals, but you're also closing full time. So on the negative side, if they don't source that much pipeline for themselves, then they are removed from the SDR pipeline altogether. So they get 50% of their deals sent to them, have to self-source 50%, and if they don't, they have to self-source 100% the next month. So there's usually pretty big fire, right? Yeah, of motivation under someone's, behind someone to get them moving in the right direction of self-sourcing. And then the last measure is an account executive, or the last step is an account executive. So they're full-blown. You can put them into SMB or mid-market, and they're on the 100% of the pipe, the SDR pipe that's average or normal. So it can flex up and down for different companies. I've seen 75%. Some companies I've seen 100. Some companies I've seen 25%, but basically in the account executive role, they're given a revenue quota. Regardless of SDR pipe, they're told to, either source deals or do whatever you have to do to make it happen. So for just in summary, step 1 is they're going to be an SDR, 2, senior SDR with all of these criterion. 3 is ISR junior AE. 4 is an account executive, and that is how I have kept churn really low, and then make sure that you're ready. You've been trained on, Sandler, or, Sandler, some kind of third-party selling, and then you also have given mock demos and real demos to make sure whenever you become an account executive, you can crush it like normal, Gabby.
Hell yeah.
That's it. Thanks, everyone, for coming, and have a great rest of your day.